perfect. No problems. A couple more hours, we'll have a baby. So I reach down and pick up the phone, and I start to dial. My wife's like, what are you doing? It's like, I'm calling my mom to tell her we're having a baby. She goes, no, put that up, breathe with me. So I hee-hee-hooed for 9 hours until we had our son. But it just goes to show you that even as simple as standing next to her, I was not going to get out of this at all. And so we can imagine these children coming for Dr. Still. And some of you know these stories. So you can imagine Dr. Still thinking, oh, it's a kid, mom needs you, dad said come get you. He grabs his obstetrics bag and he heads out after the kid who's already left. Catches up with this kid because this kid's getting back home. You know, mom's in trouble, whatever. And so they go for almost 10 miles. It starts to snow. They go 15 miles, and it's really getting to be a blizzard. They finally get to the house, and it's like way out in the middle of nowhere. And when they get there, A.T. still goes in the house, and the woman isn't having a baby. She looks like she's dying of pneumonia. She's there on the table. She can't breathe. She's thrashing. She's fevered. She's dying. And he's looking and he goes, I got nothing. I've got nothing for this woman. And as he's thinking, the breathing's the worst problem. So he puts his hands on her chest because she has this very labored breath, having a hard time. And so as he's got his hands on her chest, he's thinking, what do they have? What medicines? What can I do? Because he was sure it was pneumonia. And as he's got his hands on her chest, he's just absent-minded because he knows the anatomy. He's just going through the whole anatomy, you know, third rib, third rib. And he gets over here and he thinks, oh my gosh, she's got all her ribs broken. And then as he feels around, it's like, no, everything's there. It's just massively dislocated. Gosh, that has to be horribly painful. He said, well, at least I can work on that. So he sets to work on her vertebrae and ribs, basically, and gets them all in place. And as soon as everything kind of clicks back where it belongs, she takes a deep breath and relaxes. The fever drops. She goes to sleep. And A.T. Still's looking at her going, well, I really can't do anything else. So he goes to bed. He gets up in the morning, and his patient's gone. He's like, my gosh, where is she? And they go, oh, you know, frontier woman. She feels great. She got chores to do. She's out working. And A.T. Still's like, you can't heal pneumonia in 8 hours. I mean, weeks, if that. What happened? It's like, well, it's wintertime. We're butchering the hogs. And so we had 2 hogs. We cut, and we bled, and we tied the first hog off. And we started on the second hog. But the rope came loose. All that weight on that pig hit her with that soft snout, and she stumbled back. And there was just a little blue bruise, a contusion. And then everything went wrong. And A.T. Still says, you mean to tell me that all of these symptoms were structure related, that dislocation of all the ribs, and as soon as I put them back, the symptoms go away? The same symptoms of pneumonia. Now, he says, had I not treated her, the breathing, the mucus, all these chain effects might have created what we call pneumonia and illness in her. But he says the thing is, what I realized is we've got to check the structure before we look for disease, viruses, bacteria. And if the structure's fine, then we think maybe it's pneumonia. But you should never assume something's a disease until you check the structure. So Dr. Still's like, how many people have been treating that might have had something like this? And so he starts experimenting for the next couple months. And then June 22nd, 1874, he says, I've looked, I've seen it, I've got it. Structure can create symptoms that could look like disease. And we fixed the structure first. And that's what he did. So when he threw the banner of osteopathy to the breeze, it wasn't that he got hit by lightning. He looked at the story as a child, and he realized what he was doing with the rope, changing the blood flow. When he hit that log and things went back into place, the woman with the leg in the air and the Hispanic person, all of it came together of how if things go from abnormal then put him back to normal, and the whole body will go back to normal. So this is why. And why he didn't tell his peers? Well, they would have said, my gosh, what a horrible doctor, you know, your assumptions and stuff. So he only told the students. And thank goodness one of the students wrote it down, or we would have not known. But it makes perfect sense. Most great inventions are completely by accident. The X-ray. You know, Edison created the bulb, and the joke was that he tried 1,000 different things for the filament to get it to light up. And he tried bamboo, and he tried cotton, and he tried copper, that's too hot. And someone said, well, how did it feel to fail like 1,000 times? He said, I'm a scientist. I didn't fail 1,000 times. I found 1,000 things that didn't work. And then I found one that did. And that's all I needed. And so it's your attitude about things too. So I think he came up with tungsten finally in the end. But here's the other thing. You know, light bulbs burn out. And you guys have them. They burn out. So some wise guy said, wait a minute. What if we create a light bulb with no filament? We take a cathode, we shoot the electricity through to an anode, and it bounces back. So there is no filament. It's just electricity going back and forth, and we've got a light bulb that'll last forever. But when it does that, it excites the electrons like, you know, I don't know, 10 million times a second or something like that, some crazy number. I think maybe it's 30 million times a second. It excites the electrons, and that creates this ray that lets us see through the body. So really, trying to create a better light bulb is what created the X-ray. It just so happened they noticed that when his new light bulb was working, there was something glowing over here. And it's like, wait a minute, that never happens when I have a light bulb on. And that's when they discovered something was coming out of this. And so the X-ray, an accident. Osteopathy, an accident. But thank God. So we still do this in Missouri. I don't know about Calgary, but this is still a very common sight around where we live. It's still very rural. Very fun. We got Amish all through our area. So, anyway, osteopathy came from a pig. So as I said, everything came a little bit by little bit by little bit to it. And Doctor said, you know, he believed that there were spirits. And I know this is, you know, sometimes people say, well, were they real spirits? Or were they the spirits like your grandparents? Or the things you learned from your mother or your grandparent that's still with you? In some ways, that's like a spirit. But Dr. Still actually talked about physical spirits too. So he was what we call a spiritualist. He believed that there is something left when the body's done. And that's why he believed there is a spirit that you can communicate with, you can talk with. That's what we are, in essence. We come in as a spirit, and we're perfect. And that's why we become human. Because we're so perfect, we don't understand imperfection. So the whole journey of human life is to understand imperfection, so that when we come out, we're more perfect, because we've now experienced imperfect too. It's really kind of how the mix is supposed to. That's why we live, is that a perfect spirit needs a little more information. And so maybe you believe it, maybe not, but it's pretty cool. But Dr. Still said that incident of realizing, putting the abnormal back to normal and everything coming back, he was just like looking out in the sky and seeing nothing, not even a single star. And suddenly you recognize the whole universe and galaxies all out there. So, he used an analogy about, Dr. Still never tells the story about the pig, but he uses analogies that if we took, you know, a piece of meat and hung it on a hook, does that sound like the pig that was being butchered? And a hog tied out of the way and pulling a piece will create an energy. And basically, it's like an atom bomb in our system. And it changes the energy in you. So we have energy, we know that can become solid, and solid can go back to energy.